Welcome, dear tea friends from around the world. And today we have a new class for the spring that is coming. And it's almost exactly a year that I've started to do these videos. Actually, it was on March 27th. So next week on Saturday will be exactly 1 year. But we are taking our celebration a bit early because yeah, it's spring and spring calls for green tea. So we are going to go a bit deeper in the class that I made last year, and I think there's a lot of material to do so. So today, spring, we'll talk about spring, about green tea, history. We will talk about how to best brew it, how to brew it, in which vessel, but we also talk first about the different process methods for green tea. There are three major processing methods, and if we have time, we'll maybe also talk about aging and of green tea. So, for those who don't know me yet, I'm Stéphane Erler from the Tea Masters blog. I'm founded this blog, and I have also the tea-masters.com boutique. Yes, it's been now a year that I've started to do videos online, thanks to the unfortunate events, but this has led me to provide these courses, so I have a little bit also less time to write on the blog and to take pictures sometimes. But I hope that you are enjoying these videos. My English class continues at the same time. For my French and German class that I also do, I will maybe start to postpone to start them 1 day later instead of on the same day. I hope you don't mind. Let me know if this works for you. I might even do them during the week so that I have more time with my kids. But yeah, we'll see how it goes tomorrow, and maybe we'll change again the schedule. But for English, I can probably continue to do it on the same day, same moment. Okay, so green tea. What is the history of green tea? Actually, green tea is the very first type of tea that was invented in China. It's the most original type of tea. That's why it's also the tea that is still most commonly found in China. Green tea. Actually, recently there were some excavations that found that even traces of green tea during the Han Dynasty in the Han tomb. But until Tang, actually, green tea was not brewed on its own. It was always part of soup or a beverage with other spices or food or light food. So it's only actually with Lu Yu in the Tang Dynasty that green tea was better defined and was prepared with only a pinch of salt. Before that, there were other spices. In Tang, they stopped with the spices except for a pinch of salt. But at that time, green tea was still pressed and then crushed into powder, and that's how they were making the tea, which is of course different from us. Even in Song Dynasty, after Tang 1,000 years ago, they were still crushing the leaves after the tea had been pressed, and this crushed leaves, this powder is very similar to matcha in Japan nowadays. But instead of boiling it like they would do in Tang, green tea was simply whisked in a bowl. So actually, it's only starting with the Ming Dynasty, 14th century, that green tea is processed and prepared the way we most commonly know it nowadays, as a loose leaf tea and brewed instead of being whisked or whisked in the Song or boiled in the Tang Dynasty. So 14th century is the real beginning of green tea that is similar to the way we are drinking it nowadays. Yeah, now, what are the main three processes to make a green tea nowadays? First, so in China, what is still the most common way of processing green tea is to, it's called chaoqing in Chinese, which means we use a wok and yeah, kind of a big, large frying pan to heat the leaves. And why would you want to heat these leaves? Actually, it's because you want to stop the oxidation. Let me also go back to what is green tea. Green tea actually is a tea where the leaves are not oxidized. Oxidized is 0%. You also have white tea and yellow tea that are in the same area, but white tea was invented much later. Yellow tea also, and they are very some smaller parts in the market. Today we don't talk about them. So green tea was actually simply picking the teas in spring when they are very small. You pick the leaves. Actually, we try to pick the buds when they are very small, very tender, preferably before the Qingming festival on April 5th. So the time between the beginning of spring, which is now today, and April 5th is the best time in China to pick these tiny buds. And every day, actually, as it becomes warmer, these buds will every day grow faster and be larger and larger. That's why really the very first harvests are usually the most tender, the smallest, because in a normal climate, normal weather pattern, every day as the sun shines longer and longer during the day, these leaves get more and more sunshine, and therefore they grow faster and faster. So once you pick these leaves, you let them dry, wilt under in the shade, and then you don't want them to start to oxidize like you would with oolong. So actually, quite quickly, you want to stop this oxidation process, which naturally occurs when the leaves are lose their moisture and maybe are handled. So here you have to quickly heat them up. So you heat them up in a wok, chaoqing. This is the traditional way in China. There is also the hongqing method, where you heat them up in an oven that blows very warm air. This is mostly the method that is used in Taiwan. It can also be used in places that do larger quantities. It's faster to use hongqing method than chaoqing, because when you stir fry the leaves, you can only handle a small amount at a time. In an oven, if you build a very large oven, of course, you can make much more at a time. And then the third method is zhenqing, steamed. So instead of using hot air, you use steam to heat the leaves and stop their oxidation process. And this is what they are using in Japan with the sencha. That's one of the main reasons why they tastes very different from Chinese or Taiwanese greens is because they use the steam to stop the oxidation process. So when you face a green tea, always try to think or try to get information not only about where it comes from, when it was picked, was it before April 5th in spring, but the cultivar, of course, but also the method of process. So, but usually it's actually quite simple. Japanese greens are steamed. Chinese usually are wok, fried, and maybe not fried, wok heated, and in Taiwan they use more the oven to heat them. How are we going to brew our tea? And I start to be thirsty. I want also my benefit of drinking tea while giving my class. So here there are several ways of brewing green tea. If we go back in time during the Qing dynasty, during the Ming dynasty, that's why when it started, during the Ming dynasty, the way of making green tea is with a larger teapot, and then using larger cups to drink from them. Why a large teapot? I'm sorry, it's really hot today. Really, spring is coming. So the large size for the vessel is because green tea is meant to be very light, and it's very refreshing. But unlike oolong, if you brew it too concentrated, it will become bitter, because these are very tiny buds that we are talking about, and these leaves are very, very concentrated, and very concentrated in very spring fresh aromas that are very beautiful, very delicate when they are brewed in a low concentration. But when they are too concentrated, they can really be upsetting the stomach and become bitter or astringent. That's why the traditional original method was in these large teapots with actually very few leaves. So green tea, since it's also the most common tea drunk in China, is a tea that is drunk in all kinds of ways possible. It starts with simply using a glass. I've seen that a lot being done in Sichuan a few years ago when I went there. They simply put their leaves, a glass, add the hot water, they wait, it looks nice in the glass, they drink, they're very happy. So you can also, I've demonstrated it also last year in video, you can use a bowl to brew your green tea leaves. And bowl brewing actually is the method employed by tea farmers to test their leaves, because that's how they let them brew for a long, long time, and then they can really test how good it is, how quickly it becomes bitter, then it's not so good. But if it does not become bitter so quickly and it stays sweet for a long time, then it's a good sign for the quality. So, and of course, you can also make tea, green tea in a gaiwan, and that's what we are going to see today. And maybe the ultimate way of making green tea is in a silver teapot. But this only works with the very best quality of green tea. I think I've demonstrated this also in the past. So we are not going to talk about this today. Today we are going to talk about, again, the maybe the entryway of making green tea with the gaiwan, because the gaiwan is a very affordable tool. It's also a tool that you can use with any kind of tea. So it's really the tool for not only professionals and for judges, people who want to have a very neutral way of brewing the tea, so that the tea is not affected by the material that is used. But it is also a way of brewing tea for people who start. But today I'm going to give you a twist on this. I'm going to show you 3 different ways of making green tea with a gaiwan. Okay, let's start with the first one. Now, we always preheat our gaiwan, even with green tea, which is said to be more delicate. Now, of course, that's when you want to make a good tea, and there might always be exceptions. You can challenge me. I can also make green tea without preheating my gaiwan. Of course, you can always do this, but I believe you will not get the most out of your leaves, because lower temperature of the water that goes in a cold gaiwan will not be able to get out so many flavors from the leaves. And this actually might be okay with a very bad tea. You don't want to get all the flavors when the tea is bad, but in our case of looking for tea excellence, we don't want to be in this position. We always try to brew good teas, and therefore we try to find the method that is suitable for good teas, not for bad teas. Okay, let's also get some leaves out. Now, green tea, if you're not outside and if you are quite calm at home, you don't need too many leaves. Green tea, as I was explaining, is small leaves that are very concentrated and very fresh, so you're not supposed to make a strong brew out of them. Now, these leaves are from last year. I will go and check with my farmer this week on his current 2021 harvests, but well, it's always interesting to see how last year's harvest is still holding up. If we have time after I show you the brews, maybe we'll talk about aging. Otherwise, we'll maybe just talk about it next week. So, the 3 ways of making green tea in a gaiwan, or actually you can also apply this in a bowl or in a teapot, large or small, is you have the choice of when you put your green tea, when you put your leaves. You can put the leaves before you pour your hot water. You can put your leaves when you pour first half, and then you put your leaves and then you pour another half, or you can put your leaves after you have filled your gaiwan with water. So let's start with probably the method that we use most of the time, because it's also the method we use for oolong and pu'er and all other teas. First we put the leaves, and then we are going to brew, and we brew always with boiling water, except when we don't. But the point is with good quality leaves, you always want to have boiling water. However, this does not mean you pour the boiling water just in any way. You don't care. No, actually, we know green tea is more fragile, it's really very delicate. So we want to pour very delicately this water. Now, I did not touch the leaves directly. I poured on the walls and I could see the leaves swirl, turn slowly. So the idea is we want to be very careful, very delicate, pour very slowly so that the leaves won't be stressed and will only release their lightest aromas, their lightest fragrances with the first brew. Okay, we look at the color changing. Maybe even try to smell. Water here. And here we go. The brew looks really very, very light green. It looks very transparent, very bright. Oh, the green tea I'm brewing is my Sancha Biluchun from spring 2020 last year's Biluchun. It's a way also to check how it has been stored. Was I able to store it well so that it would keep its freshness? This is really the goal of storing for tea in its earlier years. Let's see how I did the brew and how well it is preserved. Nice balance of lightness, sweetness, freshness. Some very flowery aromas. A little bit light, really very on the refreshing side. It's very different from in terms of concentration from oolong, from a high mountain oolong. So you have to adjust also a bit your expectations when you are drinking green tea compared to oolong tea. You won't get the same intensity of flavors in a green tea than in an oolong, but this is normal. Green tea really is about freshness and lightness. Mm. And now, so it's really interesting to see that it has really aged very nicely, because I barely feel that it's 1 year old. It still seems to be just as fresh as when I selected it last year. So this is this means I probably did not such a bad job in preserving it in my storage. The way to well store your green teas is to store them in a cool place, in a clean place, a place without sunshine also. So a closet in a room that is pretty cool and clean would be a good choice for storing green tea. There are some. It's also possible to store in the fridge or in the freezer, but for this, it's really best. It's if the tea is sealed. If it's not sealed, it is really very risky, because then the flavor, the smells from the refrigerator might enter and mix with leaves, and leaves are very good at absorbing the smells from the surroundings. And if it's not well sealed, and if you just get a little bit of smells from the refrigerator, this would taste really quite bad. So it's really high risk, and if you are able to store it well outside the fridge, actually it's much less risky, and you get still a very fresh leaves even after 1 year. So from my point of view, it's not necessary to go to the freezer or refrigerator, especially if you have large quantities. The only exception for this, the only teas that I put in the freezer are actually matcha, because they are very small, and I also have a machine where I can vacuum seal, so I can always seal it completely. But except for matcha, I don't put any tea in the freezer. And if you do put the tea in the freezer or in the fridge, when you take them out, you have to wait until the leaves are at room temperature before you open the seal. Otherwise, the temperature difference between the tea that comes from the cold and your room temperature will make that the leaves will quickly absorb all the humidity that is in the air. So wait until room temperature is reached for the leaves before you open up, so that it won't suck all the humidity, and because then once you have the humid leaves, you will have oxidation, and the tea next time when it comes out will not taste so good. Okay, now let's do a second way of brewing the tea. Again, always we preheat our gaiwan, and now I'm going to show how we do when I put the leaves half during the brewing. So again, I'm getting a similar amount of leaves. You can keep the leaves in the original plastic foil. The plastic foil is also very practical because you can fold the foil and you can really make sure that you have the least air possible in the foil. If you keep the tea in a jar, now I've only just put the leaves in this jar before the class. You cannot control exactly, you cannot reduce the amount of air in the jar. I cannot press it. So either you have a jar that you can fill to the top. In this case, why not? But otherwise, the plastic foil is a good choice for a duration of 1 year. Okay, let's do now our second method. It's always again with my Sancha Bilochun. Not yet. So first, now I fill half. With boiling water. Now I'm adding my leaves. And now I'm adding the other half. Okay. All the leaves are wet, so I simply can put my lid on. So the difference between this method and the first, you can see, is it's more gentle on the leaves. It is a larger shock for the leaves to receive boiling water on them and then make them twirl in the gaiwan. If you simply delicately with your hand let them glide and slide on the boiling water, it is more gentle. So they are not going to release as many aromas as if you pour the hot water, the boiling water directly on them. Still, here we fill half, so it's a medium gentle. The most gentle way will be on the third method. The third I will show you is when I first fill completely the gaiwan and then I put the leaves on the boiling water. Let's see how the leaves open. Can continue a bit. Yeah, you can always monitor. This is really the advantage of the gaiwan, and you can adjust the time depending on your own taste. There are some, even with green tea, some people like it stronger, some people like it weaker, so it's always possible to adjust. Here there's no right or wrong. Here the way I'm pouring the tea in the cups, one from cup 1 to cup 3 and then back, is a way to balance the concentration of the brew in the cups. But if you have one person who likes it very light and another person who likes it very strong, you can also go 1, 2, 3. So the first cup will be lightest and the last cup will be strongest, and then you can also make tea for people who have different preferences. And this is also one skill to know, but for me, I try to make the same concentration. Here you can see something quite similar. Let's see how it tastes. The flowery aspect comes out very nicely, the lightest aspects. Drinking all this hot tea makes me sweat, but in a nice way. I hope you have noticed that I'm not only dressed in green, but all my chashi is also in the green style, really celebrating spring with this theme of green. I like this. It has refined, it has made the tea rounder. Also on my first brew, it was a little bit light to my taste. Here I've pushed it a bit longer, so this is not maybe due to the different method, but also adjusting to my preference. Let me see. In terms of quantities, pretty much the same. The leaves seem to have even opened up better in this second way. So it's not because you don't pour on the leaves that it's not going to open well. A green tea is not rolled like an oolong, so actually the leaves are already opened, kind of. So it's easy to open the leaves simply with this method also. Very nice. Of course, after 1 year, there is a difference also in terms of energy. Aging always means a certain loss of substance or power. So this green tea seems more tamed, more sage, more quiet a little bit than a new freshly harvested green tea. But in terms of fresh scents, they are all there. I don't feel any post-oxidation that sometimes occurs with some teas, and then you feel, oh, this one is not fresh anymore. This is still completely fresh, just maybe a little bit more quiet, a little bit more gentle. And of course, this way of brewing it is also a way very gentle to get this delicate flavors out of them. And now the third method. Getting some same amount of leaves again. Okay. First preheating. I think I'll have enough for the brew. And in the preheating, what is always important is that you not just preheat the cup, but especially that you preheat the cover, the lid of the gaiwan. if you're in a hurry, you can pour the lid in the boiling water below. But really, I suggest that you always touch a little bit with your finger if the gaiwan is warm or not. Okay, Elizabeth is wondering which style brings out the most out of the leaves. Now, of course, the first style, when you pour all the water on the leaves, is the style that gets the most flavors out of the leaves. But we know that green tea is not so much about energy, but it's about delicacy. It's about the finesse of the leaves. So with some, and that's also why most vendors will tell you, oh, you have to use a lower temperature for brewing green tea. They even go to 80 degrees Celsius. Here I'm using boiling. So boiling is really the way that the water temperature that gets the most out. But the idea of these two other methods is to be more gentle with the leaves, because boiling is really a method that is a little bit stressful for the leaves. But by now you will see with this method, it's really the most gentle one, and that's when you get the lightest and the most delicacy from the flavors. So it's more suitable for a tea, for green teas that are that are maybe not ready for being brewed in a silver teapot, but that are like that are at 95%, so not 100%, because really perfection is rarely found in this world, or when it's found, it costs an arm and a leg. So this method is a way to make the green tea that is very good taste even more delicate, more balanced. So by pouring, the water, of course, now is already getting cooler, especially in porcelain. So now I'm adding my leaves very gently on top. I noticed that most of them are dropping slowly. What we can always do is gently help the last leaves on top and cover the gaiwan. So this is now the most gentle way of preparing green tea, simply by putting the green tea on the boiling water in the preheated gaiwan. So we still try to get the highest temperature possible to extract most flavors, but now we put the leaves very gently. We still cover. We could also, in a bowl, you would not cover, and then you would also get less out because the temperature would be less. And now we just wait according to the concentration preference we have. In the meantime, we can empty our cups. So it really depends on the green tea that you have. You can try different methods, and then you will, I hope, notice some differences. This is also one way of paying more attention to the taste of the tea and how the brewing method will impact the flavors. If you are and then you will be able to to find out by yourself which method suits your green tea the most. I'm going to wait a bit longer. So, oh. Let's see what this tea and this method has in store for us. Always empty to the last drop. Okay, I would say even a lighter color this time. Let's try. Probably the roundest. In terms of flowery fragrances, I think the second was the nicest. This one is really maybe the sweetest in terms of taste, but the second I think was the one that brewed the most. Here the leaves are a bit less well opened, so you can always try compare to this one. The second one really is the one that opens the nicest, I think. A little bit similar to the first. Okay. Let me try to show you. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. So if I would have to choose, I would choose number 2 as my favorite. This might also be due to some how long I let the tea brew. Apparently this is a tea that can be brewed longer and release even more aromas when it's brewed, and it does not become bitter, which is very good. So it was definitely interesting to see how these 3 methods were able to get us different concentration levels, also especially in terms of delicacies, lighter and lighter. Now this last one is really the lightest, the sweetest, but maybe not the one with the most fragrances. The most fragrances was in the number 2. So, but this again could be personal preference, or maybe you can adjust it by pouring a bit longer, by brewing it a bit longer. So this is more ways for you to enjoy your tea, your green teas. And yeah, I think we'll talk about aging of green tea next time. Today, yeah, we are already past our normal time. I thank you for watching, like my videos, and I'll see you next week.